Good morning. So now you know who we are, and before we start, I'd really like to know a little bit more about who you are. Maybe we can do a show of hands. Who in the room works in procurement? All right, a good number. Who works in sustainability? About the other half. That sounds about right. Any other service providers or competitors in the room? All right, so we're between friends. That's very nice. Different question. Who's currently most concerned with reporting emissions? That's what you care about at the moment. All right. Who wants to engage with their suppliers on the topic of emissions? All right. And who's currently wondering how to accelerate the reductions? That's what you're here for. Excellent. A last question. Who's already on their third coffee today? All right. Great. So, we are here to tell you a little bit more about decarbonization, and the reason is simple. If you work in procurement, typically you control the relationship with your suppliers, right? You drive the contracts, you drive the discussion, you decide who's a partner and who's just a transactional company with you. But very often what we've seen is there's a lot of bad data around decarbonization. It's a mess. People who use just spend-based emission factors complain that it's not granular enough and they don't have the level of detail they would wish for. And on the other end of the spectrum, people who say, hey, I need a product carbon footprint for everything I buy, realize that maybe they get it for 5 or 10% of the suppliers and they're only for the top 3 or 4 products. And it's very expensive and cumbersome. So we've got those two extremes in the spectrum. And some companies get stuck in what I like to call analysis paralysis and then never move to the actual reduction. They spend all of their effort on actually getting the data right. And it's not like that at Siemens. At Siemens, they've chosen a different approach and they've decided to collaborate with us, ctrl+s, to make that approach possible, to engage with a lot of suppliers and to drive reductions actively. Yeah? Before I pass on to Tjeerd, I'll tell you just a little bit about who they partnered with. So ctrl+s, we are a company based in Berlin. We work with a lot of big names in the industry, especially machinery and equipment, but also in some other sectors, business service companies, pharma, energy, etc. And we help our clients to decarbonize. So we are about not just measuring, but also reducing emissions. That's really important. And we don't come from the software side. Yes, some of our solutions are software-based, but we come from the science, we come from the practice. I personally was a CPO for an industrial company before I joined ctrl+s at the beginning of the year. So I led a team of 100 people worldwide. We had about 1 billion euros spent, thousands of suppliers, and I was in charge of all aspects of procurement, from quality to delivery to sustainability, and I was really trying to drive decarbonization with my suppliers, and I was doing it the hard way. And then I got to meet Moritz Niel, our CEO, and he told me about how it's done at ctrl+s. Moritz has about 20 years of experience doing life cycle assessments. He really comes from the science aspect of things. So we are a very practical company. We're here to solve a business challenge and not to sell a software. Yeah? And with that, I'd like to pass it on to Tjeerd, who will tell you more about the context at Siemens, first of all. Tjeerd.
Thank you, Thomas. So my intended contribution to this masterclass is to give you some inspiration of how it is possible at scale to achieve upstream CO2 reduction with your suppliers. And I mean, not only if you are a small and medium-sized company, but also if you are a big tech company like Siemens. And in the next couple of minutes, I would shortly explain to you what we saw as a major challenge, how we partnered with ctrl+s on solving that challenge to actually, in a very cost-effective way, reduce CO2 in our supply chain. I would like to start with a very brief overview of Siemens to highlight the complexity and the magnitude of this undertaking. So I think most of you are familiar with Siemens. We are underway in the capital goods industries, process automation, factory automation. We do building technologies, grid management, and then everything what has to do with rolling stock, rail infrastructure, and then we also have our publicly listed healthiness. We have set quite ambitious CO2 reduction targets. We are well on the way in our own operations, but as you can see, with 0.4 megatons, this is on the total scope 1 to 3 emissions. We are not neglectable, but of course, it's not significant in the whole consideration. The most, due to the nature of our products and solutions, obviously in the use phase, where they are powered by electricity by our customers. So we focus on the upstream part. And for this, I would like to show you how we do that. And that is not something easy, and we have also started already 5-6 years ago to think about how could this work at scale, and also how can we not only create a transparency but also achieve the reduction that we need. We have set ourselves the ambition to reduce until 2030 by 20% from a 2020 baseline. So you can see the complexity, 67,000 more than 67,000 suppliers, 35 billion PVO across the globe. So what we have developed jointly with ctrl+s, that is in the past the carbon web assessment, and with the carbon web assessment we try to use the main lever with supplier engagement in a very effective way. And with that, we have achieved so far, compared to the baseline I just mentioned, -2%. So you might think, ooh, that's not a lot, and if you want to achieve the -20%, you still got a long way to go. Yes, that's true. However, if you consider that also our purchasing volume increased by 26% over the same period, we are pretty satisfied with that achievement, and also are confident that we get to the -20%. Would it work with only supplier management? Most likely not. We of course need to think about material substitution, tackling design topics to also make our products more with a lower environmental footprint. So how are we actually doing this? That's not something that is built overnight, and here the portfolio of ctrl+s comes into play, which we also in the last years intensively and jointly developed. So in the middle, that is our heart, that is our monitoring, where all our figures are being reported. For this, we use the product by ctrl+s, of which you will hear a bit later. The solution item S. It's a economic model which gets updated by primary data which we obtain, and that's on the left-hand side via the supplier S platform. Via the supplier S platform, we run the carbon web assessment. I will show you in a second how that actually works. And on the right-hand side, we of course also need to work on our environmental footprint. And for this, we have also developed an in-house solution in our supply chain management area, which is called Green Digital Twin, with which we can also then look into the environmental footprint also beyond CO2. With the supplier S platform, we have already 6,000 suppliers who participated, and as you can see, if they participate, it reduces their footprint compared to the market model by an average 9%. So it's actually only getting the transparency already helps a lot, because you can already disclose a reduction. And the other topic is that you can use with the supplier S platform it also for active management, and then also drive with your suppliers the carbon reduction. So we are very serious about sustainability, and that is also why we have a clear expectation from our suppliers. We consider this on 2 dimensions. The first one is the assurance part. That is also because of regulatory requirements, where of course everyone needs to step up. But the main focus that my team has, that I am heading, the upstream decarbonization, is on driving the decarbonization performance of our suppliers. And that is what we mainly do via the carbon web assessment with the products from ctrl+s. We expect from our suppliers that they pursue a net zero pathway. That means we can also, via the data we get back, we can verify how well are they underway, because also via the supplier-s platform, they report on their ambitions. And then we also expect our suppliers to ask their suppliers to participate in the carbon web assessment, and this can then also be handled by the supplier-s platform. So, before I go into the detail, I want to quickly show you where we came from. We started in 2018, 2019, together with the predecessor of ctrl+s, to work on an economic model, what probably all of you have established by now. It's an input-output model on the CO2 footprint. We then found a way, via the carbon web assessment, to replace that secondary or that model data with primary data in a very intelligent and cost-effective way, and that was the introduction of the carbon web assessment. We then scaled that up, because in our organization we've got about 4,000 procurement professionals that we would like to have them decarbonize their suppliers, because this is not something that a headquarter department can do at scale, and also because we don't have the resources. Just for your information, this whole process we run with a very lean team. It's just a couple of FTE, and then we have the whole organization supporting this. I will also show you in a minute how we run that, and also how the API to the supplier-s platform then also supports this, so that you basically have a fully automated process, which we are continuously enhancing. So how actually are we running this carbon web assessment via the supplier-s platform? It's pretty straightforward. You would probably say, oh, that's kind of a no-brainer, but to do this at scale with over 10,000 suppliers, it required, of course, quite some thinking of how can we get this easy, how can we easily explain this to our buyers in the organization, and also to enable active management. So we've got a three-step approach. It's called assess, detect, develop. In the assess phase, we use the item S product by ctrl+s, and then we get the footprint for our supplier base, and then also for our commodities. Then we can obviously detect the main drivers for CO2 on the supplier level and on the commodity level, also on regional perspectives, and then we can use the questionnaire via the supplier-s platform, our carbon web assessment, to ask the suppliers about their efforts and their ambitions to achieve the carbon reduction that we require. And also our buyers, they can discuss action plans with their suppliers, so they can then also actively manage this reduction. So I already mentioned the products that are in focus of today by ctrl+s, and I think, Hannah, you will tell us a bit more about that now.
Yeah, thanks, Tjeerd. So let's have a look at the data tools that make this possible for Siemens. So it's one solution in two products. It's a unique combination of items on the left side. It's a procurement data-based model that estimates your baseline emissions. And then step two, suppliers, a smart supplier engagement platform, integrating not just any primary data, but relevant primary data. And what's special here is that we really take both speak with each other in one ecosystem and are integrated, right? As opposed to just stopping on the left side, as Thomas described in the beginning, or focusing on a specific kind of primary data. What we're doing is different. We bring them together with their respective strengths. How does it look? First, items. It jumps off of your readily available procurement data, whether it's spend data or if you have mass data available, great. We can also integrate that. Map it to our model. And items then provides you instantly with the complete overview of your supply chain emissions, and also broken down by scope 3 upstream category, by business unit, by supplier, and that's just the beginning. So we can really drill down deep and slice and dice the data as we want. If you, for example, have already part number available in your procurement system, we can even tell you the emissions by specific part number or article number. And of course, this data flexibly feeds into your processes, right? Whether we deliver a lean BI dashboard or deeply integrate into your procurement software via API, both is possible. Now, how do we arrive at such detailed insights, right? Being a model. So it works like this. We typically receive from our clients, from Siemens, from you, an extract of your procurement system that follows your product classification, right? Coming from product group category down to the specific product, and which also contains information of the supplier and the origin of the product. And we take this, the product with its origin, and then our proprietary items algorithm on this product level models the supply chain of these products, right? So we take macroeconomic data, tariff data. It's a lot of brain work and a lot of years of experience to really understand if you, for example, buy aluminum products in Germany, typically the aluminum for that comes from France and the bauxite or maybe from China. And it's on this fine-grained supply chain step level that we attach the respective emission factors to it, right? And then can aggregate it back on the level of interest to you, for example, suppliers. So with this exercise, you identify your hotspot suppliers, right? Those expected to contribute the most to your supply chain footprint. And it's these suppliers that you then, in step 2, can invite to suppliers, the smart engagement platform. And at the heart of the platform is the self-assessment, which you see here on the right. It's an industry-specific questionnaire serving your suppliers' reduction measures. So not like policies they have in place or sustainability management executives, but really what matters, their reduction efforts. For example, a computer and electrical equipment provider needs to answer to which extent are they using renewable energy in their operations already, to which extent are their inputs recycled, and so on and so on. And based on this description of their measures, another smart algorithm calculates the supplier's carbon reduction performance. So a single KPI that you see here in the top right corner. And carbon reduction really is what the name promises. It's the extent, the amount of emissions that this supplier already saves compared to its business as usual, compared to its industry average. So especially relevant, I believe, for this corner that cares about reduction already. Yeah, and this approach that is pragmatic and focused on what really matters, the reduction, is very efficient for both sides, right? For the supplier side, because the assessment is extremely short. They just need to describe their measures, not engage in any complex calculations yet. They receive direct feedback on their performance and can share it with every client, right? Answer once, share it with everyone. And we see that it works because suppliers answer within days, and we typically see response rates around 60–70%. But it's also very efficient for the lead firm and for Siemens, because it enables you to really manage, you've said it, I think more than 6,000 suppliers already, track their emissions in an automated way, and also fairly compare, directly compare them with each other in terms of, within an industry, who is how good in saving emissions. Yeah, so, and I think it's also audit-proof, so it's regularly verified by the Big Four companies. So, to our knowledge, it's the most efficient approach that is compliant with the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. And yeah, I think Tjeerd will now let you know how they actually use the data in their daily business.
Yeah, so you have now seen this is the supplier view, and of course we are interested in the answers then to all those areas that the supplier gives. Because we can analyze, we can discuss, and then we can also agree on actions. But what is also very cool is that in a very easy way, we get the actual carbon reduction that is calculated based on the answers by the supplier. And this is the information that we need and that we then can calculate in our spend-based approach. We can disclose the reduction that is achieved today. We can also see what is the ambition of the supplier in 1 year and in 3 years. And also what this enables is we can integrate this in our processes. So for example, we have integrated this in our sourcing decision. We have integrated this in a so-called sustainability score that every supplier gets at Siemens. And with that, we also can really use this data for decision making. We feel that this is a great and easy tool at scale because we've got this information for all the suppliers that participated. It's over 6,000, as I mentioned. So it really gives a good lever to drive the active management. And with that, I would hand back to you.
Yes. So probably also interesting for you to keep in mind that the suppliers platform can flexibly adapt to the level of maturity of your suppliers and be enriched by other kinds of primary data as well, if need be. So we already discussed it. The jump off, like the fallback, always is the estimated emissions, the industry product average, which poses no burden on your suppliers at all, right? Because they don't need to answer a single question for that, possible for everyone. And then the next step would already be their carbon reduction performance that we just described, right? So based on their abatement measures. Let's maybe make it even more concrete with one example. If in the gray line you had previously estimated that your supplier's emissions are 100 tons of CO2, then they answer the survey, and based on their measures, they have a carbon reduction of 7%. Then you, at this level, can now confidently report that this supplier's emissions are actually 93 tons, right? So more precise emissions, but also on this level already, the management insight, knowing exactly which measures they have implemented and what they need to do next in order to reduce more. And it's possible for many suppliers, right? Because the requirement on them is relatively low. They just need to describe how their factories look, the level of energy efficiency, not do any complex calculation yet. So at a fairly good price, a lot of information already. So from a cost effectiveness point of view, you could already stop here. However, we see that some organizations also face the need to, for example, integrate supplier corporate carbon footprint, CCFs, right? And if need be, we also survey them with the platform. There's even the possibility for your suppliers to calculate them in tool if they don't know it yet. However, we at ctrl+s firmly believe that this, like supplier CCFs, need to be handled with extreme caution and can only be used under very specific circumstances because they're very easily distorted. And if you're interested in understanding this more, it goes beyond the scope of this masterclass. We just wrote a white paper, the Scope 3 Gap, why supplier CCFs fall short. So if you're interested, visit us at our booth and engage in the discussion if you have a different opinion, and we're very happy to share the pre-release of the white paper with you. Then, of course, there's PCF. Good approach, however, very, very costly, and a lot of effort for your suppliers, right? So very few will actually be able to provide this kind of data. So it's never an approach that works in the breadth of your supplier base, but should be focused on specific peaks in your emissions. But we can also integrate it with our partner if you like. And of course, you don't want to forget the deeper supply chain, but you don't have to worry about it because the supplier's approach automatically propagates the carbon reduction survey into the deeper supply chain, into tier N. Now, how is this all coming together? So items based on your procurement data is your emissions overview, the baseline. And suppliers then is this place where you harvest the carbon reduction performance for a more specific baseline footprint and also already engage with your suppliers for next reductions. We bring both types of data together in one data lake, which then enables us to provide you several things, right? On the left side, an even more precise baseline footprint, also reflecting adequately your emissions trend from the past, right? For example, for your SBTi accounting. At the same time, also in the middle, the expected trajectory of your emissions based on your suppliers' plans, which measures they want to take next. And then to the right, even broken down onto an individual supplier scorecard, right? That really for this supplier is the gap analysis, already informing your buyers what measures they need to take next, be it renewable electricity, recycled inputs, stuff like this. Okay, Tjeerd. So for the finish, back to you.
Yes, I noticed we talk a bit too much, and we also, of course, want you to give the opportunity to ask some questions that we hopefully can answer. So I would just briefly run through the next point. So at Siemens, we have a fully automated platform where 4,000 buyers can run the carbon web assessment by one click. It's basically, they see all the suppliers with the PVO, with the emissions, and they can nominate. Then there is an API to the suppliers platform that triggers the invitation to the suppliers. The suppliers, they answer the questions, and then we get the feedback in terms of the CWA performance and the reduction performance, and then we can work with this information. So it's highly efficient for our buyers to run this. I want to close off from the Siemens perspective with just to highlight the achievements that we were able to make jointly with ctrl+s. So we've got over 10,000 suppliers invited. I think we've got a response rate around 58%. So also the questions that need to be answered, it's quite straightforward, and it does not take a lot of effort on the supplier side. You can also see, and that's an information we get, how well was the quality that the supplier answered. So we've got a transparency level on the information required of an average 90%. So the data we get back is useful. And with that, we were able to disclose in 24 half a megaton reduction, which is quite significant considering our 10 megaton upstream footprint. So what we are going to do as Siemens, also jointly with the colleagues from ctrl+s, is to further strengthen the assurance level. It is already fully audit-proof, so no worry about that. But of course, through CSRD and other requirements, that we need to also step up on the assurance level. One important aspect I would like to highlight, we are starting to evaluate also a tier N approach. That means at the moment we are more or less addressing only our first-tier suppliers. We have the possibility via the suppliers platform to also go into the deeper supply chain. With that, we can also tap into a bigger pool of CO2 reduction that we can then also use for our accounting. And then what is for us the key is to build an integrated system where we not only have the reduction perspective from the supplier side, but also from the product and material perspective, as well as from the market perspective, grid mix screening and the like, in one management system. So this is what we are currently building. And with that, I would hand back to Thomas.
Thank you, Tjeerd. Excellent. So you heard it from Hannah and from Tjeerd. With this unique methodology, you don't have to make trade-offs between data accuracy and depth. You don't have to focus too much time on collecting the data. You can focus on engaging your suppliers on reduction. I won't go through all the talking points. I think there are a lot of questions, apparently. So we'll have a couple minutes for questions. Just wanted to say two things. If you want to follow up with us, come to booth B63. Right? Because I don't think we'll address all the questions now. You can also approach us online. And right by the door, we have copies of the white paper that was mentioned during the talk. Thanks for your attention. What questions do we have?
That's your applause first. I think that was very interesting. I'm going to go in the middle here. We got quite a couple of questions. And I think a very, very valid question is, when you're not Siemens, when you're not that big of a company, isn't that just a couple of more questions that your supplier are supposed to answer and they are not going to reply?
Can I take it?
Yes.
Right. I think the great news is, because we have a few key players from important industries already in the tool, what we find is that whenever a new client comes in, a new lead firm, even a smaller one, a large proportion of their suppliers are already on it. We typically see 30% plus. And the type of questions we ask are very low burden on the suppliers. It's not like we're asking them to suddenly come up with a higher level of CO2 maturity. On the contrary, the questions we ask, they typically know the answer. And that's why we have a 70+% response rate and answers flowing in within a couple of days. That'd be my answer.
Okay. Another question was, you have more than 60,000 suppliers with Siemens, and I think you've done 6,000 here.
Yes.
What about the rest?
Well, what is important, you want to run this cost effective. So with the analysis we did, we only tackled the hotspots. So with the 6,000 suppliers, we have about 80% coverage rate of our upstream footprint.
All right. Last quick question. Are there any costs for the suppliers?
No, it's free of charge for the suppliers. We want to make this easy, and we don't want to put a hurdle in their way. It's the other way around. They get so much help inside the tool. They get a whole carbon accounting module free of charge. Typically what we see is we see a lot of traffic on the platform, which is not linked to actually answering customer questions. It's linked to the suppliers using the tool for their internal purposes. They love it.
All right. Where was your booth? Because there are a couple of more questions.
B63.
B63. Well, thank you very much. And I think the final applause for you. Thank you.